I want to highlight so many ways that you can reduce food waste in your own kitchen because it is a triple win. It is a win for your wallet, it is a win for the planet, and it is a win for your belly when done right. So I call that a win-win-win. Because food scraps can be incredibly tasty if you know how to deal with them, and then you don't have to throw them away. And like I said, that's better for the planet and your wallet. So welcome back to the Going Zero Waste YouTube channel. I'm Catherine Kellogg, and today we're going to be diving into food waste. Food waste is a topic I am so passionate about, and that is so close to my heart. I even wrote a book on the topic. That's how much I care about food waste. Now you might be thinking, can food waste possibly be that big of a problem? Yes, it can. So if food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitters of greenhouse gases behind the United States and China. Huge. And so much of the food waste, more than 50% of food waste, happens in our own kitchens, which means it is a huge way we can have a positive impact. In fact, not wasting food is one of the top ways. Wait, is it the top way? Okay, this is one of my favorite books. And yes, reducing food waste is the top way. According to Project Drawdown, the best thing that we can do is reduce food loss. Now, a lot of food is lost at the farm level, but a lot of it's also lost in our own kitchens. This comes right after adopting more plant-rich diets. First, I want to talk a little bit about the food waste hierarchy. First, you have source reduction. This is reducing the overall amount of surplus food. Then you have feeding people who are hungry, getting food into the hands of people who need it. Then we want to feed animals. Then we have industrial uses, and then we have composting. And at the very, very bottom, which we hope to avoid altogether, is landfill. We do not want to put our food scraps in the landfill. A lot of people think that food waste will break down in a landfill because it's a giant hole in the ground, which on the surface does make sense. But landfills are designed for storage, not for decomposition. So instead, these scraps are living in limbo and they're releasing methane, which is on average 30 times more powerful than your average greenhouse gas like carbon. So it heats up in the atmosphere a lot. And that's not good. So this is such an easy swap we can make is by composting. And I know what you're thinking. When you pull that mushy berry out of the container, the last thing you want to do is bite into that. That does not sound good. But that produce isn't bad. It can be reworked in a way that is so incredibly delicious and still good. So we're going to be going over quite a few recipes and how you can prevent food waste from happening in your own home. Which leads me to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Mill, which fits perfectly into today's food waste topic and how to handle your scraps in the food waste hierarchy after you've done everything else. Mill is a food recycler that I have been testing. It dries and grinds down food scraps overnight into clean, dry grounds. There's no smell, no mess, and most importantly, it can easily handle what I can't eat or upcycle. But the two biggest selling points for me is parties. I love entertaining, and this can handle a lot, and also winter. In Maine, our outdoor compost freezes for 5 to 6 months out of the year. So this can help keep things going until we get to the warmer months. The grounds it produces are incredibly useful, and I'll show you how I use them a little bit later on in this video. Now I'm gonna walk you through every single food scrap I saved or didn't save for this whole week. First, I had a few cucumbers. I didn't store my cucumbers properly and let them just hang out kind of loose on their own. Personally, I really like to store them in a mason jar in the crisper drawer. That seems to hold them best. Also, sometimes rolling them in a cloth napkin, put in a stasher bag works really well too for something that has just a touch more breathability to it. But I find trying to keep things in an airtight container usually works best for me, and then you don't wash them until right before you eat them. Ooh, so pretty. Mushy cucumber, wilted spinach, gazpacho, 2 food scraps in 1 delicious meal. When my spinach is starting to wilt, I try and lean into that by chopping it up and throwing it into pasta, putting it into a smoothie, or of course, putting it into this wonderful summer gazpacho. So if you have a mushy cucumber, now you can revive it and you can turn it into a delicious gazpacho, which is perfect for this time of year. Now I had some stale bread that I was really excited to use up, except when I cut into it, I realized it was very, very moldy. We had this major heat wave with a lot of humidity come through, and it took my bread from perfectly fine to not being fine at all. It got a little moldy instead of just stale. I'm gonna have to compost it. Alas. Yeah, I'm not sure I feel safe eating that. I'm gonna let my mill handle it instead. But if it were just stale and not moldy, instead I would turn it into croutons, or I would turn it into French toast. I could also turn it into breadcrumbs. One of my favorite things is when we get down to the end of the loaf of the bread, because I really enjoy making homemade bread, is to make a delicious French toast. I was talking a little bit about those mushy strawberries earlier, which I have right here. And what I did is I threw those in a pan and I let those cook down to create a delicious strawberry syrup. The best way to store your strawberries is in an airtight mason jar or an airtight container, and then don't wash them until you are ready to eat them. But if they do get a little bit mushy, you can throw them into a smoothie, tops and all. The tops are edible, or cook them down to make a delicious jam or a syrup to top things like pancakes or French toast.
It is really good.
Next thing that blows my mind is people often throw away their broccoli stalks. Broccoli stalks are delicious. It's just sometimes you might have to shave that outside area away because it can be really fibrous, but the inside is so tender. I personally like to cut them up like matchsticks, and then I throw them in with the florets, and it's a perfect bite. Also, I don't know why, but smaller vegetables just taste better, so I always recommend cutting things in smaller sizes. Smaller vegetables taste better than bigger vegetables. And if anyone can make that make sense, let me know in the comments. Now, this scrap is one a lot of people throw out, and that's your carrot tops.
I'm such a dummy. I was gonna use the rest of my carrot top chimichurri to go with my meal today. Okay, we're prepped, so I'm just gonna throw this on, but this is carrot tops that were turned into a delicious chimichurri, which is one of my favorite scraptastic recipes. Probably my favorite. I'm trying to think of something else can compete. It is definitely top 3. It is definitely top 3. It is so, so good.
So carrot tops are actually in the same family as parsley. They taste kind of like if parsley and a carrot had a baby. They are so incredibly delicious. They are so, so, so good. I love to use them in chimichurri. A lot of people use them to make homemade pesto, which is fine. You can absolutely do that. But carrot tops don't taste like basil. So for me, it's just kind of a bit of an odd experience. I don't know if I'd call it a pesto. It would certainly be an herb spread, just not necessarily pesto. However, you could also use it to make a gremolata, which I've done. I really like using herbs in a lot of my cooking, and you can also use the herb stems for a lot. But if you have a really thick one that's really fibrous, I like to tie mine and then I throw them into broth. I've been making big batches of rice with my homemade broth, so I'm gonna defrost this one for dinner and use it. I love to throw hemp seeds in that for a little bit of extra plant-based protein. And we're good to go with something that's really flavorful and tasty. So we have multiple scraps here. We have the broccoli stalks, we have the broth with the rice, and we should have the carrot top chimichurri on top. And we also used those herb stems in the gazpacho, which I made a little bit earlier on in this video.
I have meal prepped 3 days, which is very exciting. And the last thing that I prepped for the week is some delicious banana bread, which I made from some very brown bananas. Once again, a victim of that heat wave that came through. Now, something that's so interesting is you can actually make a banana bread with banana peels, and I do have an older video where I made that. However, that's not really my favorite, but it does taste good. It's just, I'm a little bit worried about the pesticides that are on the banana peels. So definitely only do it if you have organic bananas. But if you make a lot of smoothies, that is a great way to use up those peels.
I also really like to use my coffee grounds to make a body scrub, but I also only do that 1 to 2 times a year, often letting my coffee go to the compost bin simply because it would be way, way too much scrub, and I would be a little bit worried about my bathtub drain from doing that so often. If there are any food scraps that you love to use, you have to let me know in the comment section down below. Oh, and if you're looking for any of these recipes, they'll also be down in the description. So a few things I find myself putting in the mill are things that have actually spoiled. Because I film and test a lot of food waste recipes, I do often store my produce in a way that is not optimized to intentionally show you how you can make it still taste good. And sometimes I overshoot it. Sometimes I don't make it. So sometimes things go bad and I can't eat them, and I'm not going to sacrifice my own health and safety, but I do my best to eat as much as I can. Then of course you're going to have some things left over, like after you make the broth, you're going to have still all of those scraps. So what do you do with them? Put them in the compost bin. Sometimes we have leftovers that go past their prime. Maybe someone forgot a little something in their lunchbox. That's also going to go into the compost bin. And then when you have parties and events and people have half-eaten things on their plates, because I can't control what other people eat, thankfully we can put that in the compost bin. We are still trying to reduce as much as possible, but some things get left over. I've been testing the Mill food recycler for the last few weeks, and I first saw one action at the WMPO earlier this year, and I've been wanting to try one ever since. So let's start with the unboxing. I did film this part, and honestly, it was one of the lowest waste packaging experiences I've ever had, especially for a home appliance. There was no styrofoam, there were very few plastic pieces, and very clear instructions, which were on the outside of the box. The setup took me maybe 5 minutes. The longest part was waiting for the app to install. Everything was super intuitive. And once I was up and running, I started just tossing the food scraps I usually don't have a plan for. Some scraptastic scraps, some soggy salad that Justin might have forgotten in his lunch bag because alas, even the food waste fighting queen cannot save every scrap. So the machine runs overnight and dries everything down into these really fine dry grounds. It's weirdly satisfying to open the bin in the morning.
All right, let's see what we got. This smells so much like coffee, which I don't think is that unsurprising because we put a lot of coffee grounds in here. We make a lot of coffee, but it actually smells so good. It smells really, really good.
I think some of the biggest perks are that the Mill is super quiet. It doesn't smell and you don't have to empty it constantly. It definitely holds more than you'd think. We entertain a lot, and even after a recent dinner party, it was totally capable. I am the girl who always shows up to the party with the compost bucket. And Mill gives you 90 days to try this out risk-free, and it comes with a 3-year warranty, which is more than my dishwasher. So I think that's kind of rare for a kitchen appliance to have this long of a warranty, and I truly admire companies who are willing to stand up for the quality of their product. Once Mill finishes a cycle, what you're left with is this lightweight, dry, fluffy material they call grounds. It's kind of like if coffee grounds and mulch had a baby. Now you can use these grounds in a number of ways. You can mix them right into your garden soil where they'll easily break down to help enrich your bed, and they hold up really well even when it rains. It's a nice little garden boost, especially in between your compost cycles. You can also use the grounds to top up your outdoor compost bin. This is what I've been doing, and it's huge for me and all my cold weather friends whose bins will freeze solid for 5 to 6 months out of the year. So when your outdoor bin is basically a frozen block of ice, you can add the grounds on top, which will conserve space until things thaw.
But the grounds are also shelf-stable if you'd like to store them until things warm up too.
Of course, you can give these grounds away to neighbors or your community garden, but the most intriguing thing you can do is send them back to Mill. They send you a box prepaid, already labeled, and you literally just fill it, seal it, and leave it out for the postal service to grab. It's like compost meets mail-in recycling, and once Mill gets the grounds back, they will send them to small farms to be turned into chicken feed, which I think is so cool. This is pioneering a real closed-loop system I haven't seen before. And according to the EPA, the best use for uneaten food after feeding people is feeding animals. So this is a pretty accessible way to be part of that food recovery system at home. Mill has already kept more than 10 million pounds of food out of landfills. And when you use their app, you can actually track how much your household is contributing, which I find super motivating. I also think this would be an incredible addition to work kitchens. If you're looking for a green team's pitch for next Earth Day, definitely take note of the Mill. It solves the leftovers in the fridge problem and helps reduce waste in a really visible way. And having access to that mail-in program just makes it an absolute no-brainer. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it all the way to the end, please give it a thumbs up and press that big red subscribe button to be notified when new videos are coming out. And I will see you next week with a new video.